Have you ever wondered what the world would look like today if the outcome of World War II had been different? It's a chilling question, but exploring alternate histories can teach us a lot about the world we actually live in. So, let's dive into a thought experiment. What if the Axis powers, led by Nazi Germany, had won the war? First, how could this have even happened? Historians point to a few critical turning points. Imagine if the evacuation at Dunkirk had failed, trapping hundreds of thousands of Allied soldiers. Or what if Germany had defeated the Royal Air Force in the Battle of Britain, allowing for a successful invasion of the UK? Another major what if is the invasion of the Soviet Union. If Germany had focused its efforts, perhaps taking Moscow, before the brutal winter of 1941 set in, the Eastern Front could have collapsed. And in the Pacific, what if the attack on Pearl Harbor had destroyed the American aircraft carriers, crippling the U.S. Pacific Fleet for years? Any one of these events could have drastically shifted the war's momentum. So, let's assume the impossible happened. Germany, Italy, and Japan emerge victorious. What does this new world order look like around 1950? The map would be almost unrecognizable. Nazi Germany would likely control a vast empire stretching from the Atlantic to the Ural Mountains. This Greater Germanic Reich would dominate Europe. Countries like France would be puppet states. Eastern Europe would be subjected to the horrific Generalplanast, a plan for ethnic cleansing and colonization, turning fertile lands into German settlements, while the local Slavic populations would face enslavement or extermination. Life in this empire would be one of constant fear and surveillance under the Gestapo. Nazi ideology, with its horrific racial laws, would be ruthlessly enforced. Science and culture would be twisted to serve the state, with art, literature, and film becoming nothing more than propaganda tools. Meanwhile, what about the other victors? Fascist Italy might have realized its ambition of a new Roman Empire, controlling the Mediterranean, North Africa, and parts of the Middle East. Imperial Japan would likely dominate the Greater East Asia co-prosperity sphere, which, despite its name, would be a brutal colonial empire. China, Southeast Asia, and the Pacific Islands would be under Japanese control, their resources exploited to fuel Japan's war machine. Where would this leave the United States? Even if not directly conquered, America would find itself isolated in a world dominated by hostile, totalitarian empires. The Cold War we know would be replaced by a tense, multipolar standoff between the Reich, Japan, and a fortress America. This would be a Cold War with a far more menacing and ideologically driven opponent. The nuclear arms race would still happen, but it would be even more terrifying. Instead of two superpowers, we might have three or more nuclear-armed factions, each with expansionist and supremacist ideologies, making the world a permanent powder keg. The threat of nuclear annihilation would be an ever-present reality. Now, let's think about society and technology in this alternate timeline. Technological advancement would likely continue, but its direction would be very different. The Nazis were pioneers in rocket technology, so a German-dominated world might have reached space even earlier. Imagine swastikas on the moon. However, this progress would be built on a foundation of slave labor and driven purely by military ambition. The V-2 rocket program, for example, used concentration camp prisoners. Medical research would be synonymous with the grotesque and inhuman experiments conducted in the camps. The Internet, a product of American military research and collaborative spirit, might never have been invented in the same open, decentralized way. It would more likely be a state-controlled surveillance network. What about resistance? Would people just accept this grim reality? Absolutely not. Hope would live on in the shadows. Resistance movements would likely persist for decades, operating from remote regions or with covert support from an isolated America. Guerrilla warfare, sabotage, and underground information networks would be the only weapons against the totalitarian state. These freedom fighters would become legends, symbols of defiance in a world shrouded in darkness. But their struggle would be incredibly difficult against the ruthless efficiency of the Nazi and Japanese security forces. Every small victory would come at a terrible cost. The long-term consequences are truly staggering to consider. The cultural and scientific losses would be immeasurable. The brilliant minds who fled Nazi persecution, like Albert Einstein, who were crucial to the Allied victory and post-war innovation, would have been silenced. Entire cultures and peoples would have been wiped from existence. The very concepts of human rights, democracy, and individual freedom that we often take for granted would be radical, forbidden ideas. Thinking about this alternate reality isn't about glorifying a monstrous regime. It's about understanding the stakes. It shows us that the world we have today wasn't inevitable. It was fought for and won at an immense cost. The freedoms we enjoy, the progress we've made, and the very idea that all people have value are the direct antithesis of what the Axis powers stood for. This thought experiment is a powerful reminder of why we must always stand against hatred, intolerance, and authoritarianism. The past holds crucial lessons, and by studying even its darkest potential paths, we can better appreciate and protect the world we have and continue working to make it better. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey into a darker timeline. What other what-if scenarios would you like to explore? Let me know in the comments below. And if you found this interesting, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more deep dives into history. See you next time.